about a month ago and asked me if I would be part of this really important day, the Military Museum's first Veterans Day. And he asked me if I would talk about my time in uniform. And the answer, no hesitation, was yes. So thank you for asking, Dave. I really appreciate being part of this special day today. The program that I'm going to give you, first of all, I should correct a little error on the flyer. It said over 36 years or something like that. Technically, I served 1 month shy of 34 years, so I don't want there to be any confusion about that. I'm not claiming anything I didn't earn. It was just a mix-up in communications, and so it was almost 35 years. But I was invited or encouraged by a literary society of which I'm a part to talk about my time in uniform, and I made that presentation last Friday. And after it was all done, I asked the group and explained that I had this opportunity, and I said, do you think I could use the same program? And without exception, they all encouraged me to. So I hope I don't disappoint you. But I'm part of this literary society, a group of extremely well-read women, very impressive, very kind. I always feel a little less when I'm with them because they're so well-read. And for me, reading is a challenge because the time that I do it is when I fall into bed at night after an extremely long day, and I last about a page and a half. So I don't make it through books very fast. So I was extremely pleased when they asked me to talk about something of which I'm very familiar, and that is my time in uniform. But for that program, I felt very uncomfortable doing my talk without a book in my hand. And so I thought and thought and thought, and I finally settled on a book. And it is written by an author whom I adored as a child, fell in love with again as an adult, and my kids were children. And I soundly believe we could all use this author's philosophy, especially as we get older. So I would like to talk about my time in uniform by using the book by Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go. I don't normally like to read a script, but I was afraid for that engagement and for this engagement, if I didn't have a script, I would go on and on and on. So with the script, I should be able to keep it according to my time. I think it timed out about an hour and a half, and I think we have 2 hours. Okay. Congratulations! Today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head and feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the guy who'll decide where to go. So that day for Steve and me was in May of 1988, when I commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. After completing the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Program at the University of Iowa, which incidentally is where I met my soulmate. Steve and I were both in the Hawkeye Marching Band. A month later, we were married and living on our own, working and waiting for our first duty assignment. In the fall of that year, I received notification that my first duty location would be Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas. That's where I would attend the Basic Intelligence Officers course that following February. You'll look up and down streets, you'll look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your feet, your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not so good street. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. And so on a cold day in February of 1989, Steve and I, with the help of his parents and cousins, packed up our first U-Haul and headed to Texas. We made the 2-day trip safely, although not without a wicked bout of food poisoning. We checked in, received our base housing assignment, and moved in, and I started my coursework 2 days later. Intel School then was an 8-month program. There was an 8-week basic course followed by a 6-month intermediary course, and depending on your specialty, you could follow on to other courses as well. So For the intermediary course, there were three main specialties. There was signals intelligence, which is the intelligence derived from electronic signals and systems used by foreign targets, such as communication systems, radars, weapon systems, and it provides vital window into the foreign adversary's capabilities, actions, and intentions. The second specialty was imagery intelligence, and this is the intelligence derived from visual information from various sources, like a handheld camera, or from satellite imagery, or from a reconnaissance aircraft, and it also enhances situational awareness. Now, the third kind of specialty was to become my specialty, and that was all source intelligence, and this is the intelligence analysis process that systematically gathers, integrates, and disseminates information in support of decision making. It's opener out there in the wide open air. Out there, things can happen and frequently do to people as brainy and footsy as you. And when things start to happen, don't worry, don't stew, just go right along. You'll start happening too. Oh, the places you'll go. The end of September in 1989, Steve and I once again packed up the U-Haul and headed for our next assignment, the then 55th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. Much like the move before, we made the 2-day drive, checked into our new base, received our housing assignment, unpacked, and I started my new assignment the next day. My responsibility was as an air crew certification on training that they received in survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. To do that, I needed to attend the very same training they attended, the Air Force's Survival School, located at Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington State in November. We had snow up to our knees. The months that followed were full of learning, how to be a good officer and how to be an effective trainer on a topic that many of the aircrew didn't feel they needed training on, and how to navigate a male-dominated environment effectively. Then in August of 1990, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, Desert Shield began, and my organization was one of the first to be on the ground in Saudi Arabia. My boss deployed immediately, and I followed 5 months later. In the middle of January of 1991, when coalition forces decided to push Saddam out of Kuwait, I was assisting aircrew, some of whom I had fought for their attention in the classroom, and we were making very real preparations should their mission end abruptly in a shoot-down. Gratefully, we lost no aircraft, and every member of our organization who deployed in the fall returned to Offutt Air Force Base in the spring, fall of 90, spring of 91. After Desert Shield, Desert Storm, I transitioned to another job within that intelligence flight. It allowed me to provide aircrew support during peacetime missions in and around Cuba and other countries, which if I told you what they were, I'd have to shoot you. Then in October 1992, Steve and I packed up the U-Haul and headed for Tampa, Florida. My next assignment was in the Joint Intelligence Directorate of Central Command as a Pakistan-Afghanistan analyst. You'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and soon you'll be in the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you'll top all the rest. So as a brand new captain checking into Central Command, this was quite intimidating. I had been focusing my intel skills and building them basically to be effective at the tactical level. And now I found myself in an organization that maintained awareness on the operational level, but functioned at the strategic level. And no one level is more important than the other, but each requires a different skill set and experience level to function properly. I hit the ground running, I sipped from the fire hose. Sometimes it felt like I was sipping from it this way and not this way, but I tried to absorb as much knowledge as I could. My absolute saving grace was a very experienced captain by the name of Natalie Staff. She was the first person I ran into as I wandered the halls of Central Command looking for my office. We recognized each other instantly. She, from Intel School, she had been one of my instructors. She sought me out later, and the moment we connected, we became fast friends. We're working in an overwhelmingly stressful and high-pressure environment. The work I was doing as the Pakistan-Afghanistan analyst gained the attention of my director, Major General Patrick Hughes. With his feedback, the quality of my analysis and writing improved. Eventually, he asked me to accompany him on a 10-day trip to Pakistan. My responsibility was to develop and coordinate with the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad his itinerary with high-ranking members of the Pakistan military and members of the Ministry of Defense, to take notes during those meetings, and at the end of our trip, publish a trip report. It was a flawlessly executed, important, and extremely relevant engagement. I was proud of, and he was pleased with, the work I had done. When we returned, he and his senior leaders decided to move me to the briefing shop. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say, but sadly it's true, that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly on. You'll be left in the lurch. So with over 35 years of experience, I can now say to you the experience I had transitioning from desk analyst to the briefing shop was just when I figured it out and I started feeling comfortable with what I was doing, the Air Force or the organization would ask me to do something completely different, most assuredly something way, way, way outside my comfort zone theme. I know it's a very long titled theme, but that was what I've experienced in my over 35 years. So, when I heard the news that I was going to the briefing shop, I was struck with fear. I am dyslexic, and while since childhood I've developed a lot of compensation techniques, public speaking, particularly reading out loud, was something I did not do well unless I had a lot of practice and a lot of preparation. And on top of that, I had made the decision while I was in a desk analyst to get my teeth straightened. So I headed dutifully to the briefing shop with that fear and a mouthful of metal to include a palate expander. And you have to understand, my new job now was to speak confidently and clearly on lots of topics. Sometimes I would have my script that we would test run at 6 a.m. and again at 7 a.m. in order to deliver it finally at 8 a.m. And I would have handwritten notes down the margins from the analysts, altering and adjusting my script because something came in overnight. And I would be handed this script as I walked up to the stage to make this presentation in front of the command's highest ranking officers. So my time in the briefing shop was extremely short-lived, basically because I sucked. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not much for fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. Gratefully, my director was extremely kind, and he moved me out of the briefing shop when he realized it wasn't a great fit, into the Iraq team. Now, while that was a jump from the pot into the fire, it was one I was glad to make. Yes, I went to the Iraq team with my head hung low, and I had quite a bit of work to do to redeem myself among my fellow analysts in order to demonstrate my ability to contribute meaningfully to the mission. The time of this transition was in early 1994 when Saddam Hussein was draining marshes in the southern part of Iraq in order to quell, if not eliminate, the Shiite population there, and he was waging war against the Kurdish population in the north, all the while threatening the overwatch operations that had been ongoing since the end of Desert Storm. You will come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare stay out? Do you dare go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you go in, should you turn left or right 3/4, or maybe not quite, or go around back and sneak in from behind? Simple it's not, I'm afraid, you will find, for a mind maker-upper to make up his mind. So for the next 2 years on the Iraq team, there were numerous inflection points and crises that demanded high-quality intelligence and work, and quickly my ineptness in the briefing shop was forgotten. I grabbed an oar and I started pulling with my teammates. I slowly was able to replace my reputation that I had acquired in the briefing shop as one of a level-headed leader and my abilities for writing and analysis. I rounded out my time at Central Command, earning a master's degree in management from Troy State University, and in February 1996, Steve and I headed back to Omaha, Nebraska for my next assignment as a target materials flight commander. You can get so confused and you'll start to race down long, wiggly roads at a breakneck pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed, I fear, towards the most of useless place, the waiting place. So as a flight commander in the target materials flight, I supervised the efforts of 39 airmen who made unique air targeting materials, maps, charts, and other mission support materials for our nuclear plans. Immediately after I arrived, I was deployed for 6 months to northern Italy. Oh, darn. In support of European Command's operations in Bosnia-Herzegovina. When I returned from that deployment, I got to work transitioning my flight from hard copy point mensuration, and what point mensuration is that extremely precise location of a point on the face of the earth that is used to support our very sophisticated, very precise targeting, so that a missile goes into the 3rd floor, 2nd window from the right of the enemy's headquarters building. I mean, it's that careful measurement. And we had been doing it with hard copy databases, basically stereo pairs, and these big cumbersome desks. And what we were transitioning to was a completely digital database, a laptop, and a real fancy pair of glasses. While this was an important and exciting work, the best development to come from this assignment was Steve's and my decision to start a family. He was established in his career, and I was established in mine, and the time just seemed right. My next assignment was as a Reserve Officer Training Corps instructor at the University of Nebraska in Omaha. In addition to teaching the freshmen, I was the recruiting officer. And I have to tell you, this was one of my most favorite assignments because teaching the freshmen was a true blessing, and going out into the other colleges and the area high schools and onto the Air Force Base and talking about high schoolers, college folks, and airmen who were interested in earning a commission and having an opportunity to serve in the Air Force was, I just loved it. I promoted to major during this assignment. Our son Mark was born shortly after I arrived at UNO, and I left UNO extremely pregnant with Dana. The Air Force sent me back to Offutt Air Force Base and assigned me to United States Strategic Command. Steve and I were grateful for this assignment because it kept us in Omaha. Ironically, I had to sign a letter when I requested and accepted this assignment that said I had absolutely no expectation of promoting beyond the rank of major because what we were doing is what the Air Force calls homesteading, and it was frowned upon. But I was happy to sign that letter. This was good for Steve and me and our young family because we were 4 hours away from family. We were part of a thriving church community. We had friends that we had made over the previous 5 years, and so it was good. After my initial in-processing at Strategic Command and 6 weeks of maternity leave, I was in the office ready to learn my new job as the command's Operations Security Officer. Operations Security is a discipline that all branches of the military service use, by which they very thoughtfully and deliberately protect unclassified information, because sometimes you can piece together unclassified information and reveal very sensitive information about your operations, sometimes even classified information. So I was the sole Operations Security Officer for the entire command when I checked in. Unfortunately, I didn't have all my clearances that I needed to be able to function in this role. And so there was not a lot I could do in the office initially. And this was on the eve of the terrorist attack on our nation. And it was frustrating because I couldn't do anything. I couldn't help. The president was just down the hall on that fateful day, receiving updates on the situation. And I was stuck in the office doing nothing because I didn't have my security accesses. And I went home like every other American that day, just positively stunned and unsure what the next day would bring. I woke the next morning to a phone call, and I was told to stay home. Only essential personnel were to report to work. I was crushed. And I was grateful to be home with my children. But basically I was crushed because I wasn't considered essential. A few days passed and I returned to work. To my delight, all of my access paperwork had been processed. I was credentialed and free to start my job. I quickly found how hungry the command was to conduct good operational security because no one wanted to mishandle unclassified information in a way that would lead to another attack. My next assignment at Strategic Command was back into the Intelligence Directorate, this time working on the command's portion of the intelligence budget. And all I can say is the way the Defense Department plans, programs, budgets, and spends its money is complex, laborious, and extremely tedious. While I adored the people with whom I worked, I did not love my work. And for the first time, I became a clock watcher. After 15 years, I could not wait for 5 o'clock to hit. So I could go home, I'd pick up the kids, go home, and do what I adored, being a mom. And so began a really important transition. At first, I thought I would just separate from the Air Force, be satisfied with 15 years, and not worry about a retirement. But after much encouragement, I looked into both the Air Force Reserve and the Air National Guard as a traditional member, which would only require me to do 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. Long story short, I ended up in the Air National Guard as a member of the Nebraska Air National Guard. And I found myself once again in the intelligence organization that I started in as a second lieutenant after intel school. My job was as a flight commander, now working to incorporate Air National Guardsmen into the reconnaissance organization. I was promoted to lieutenant colonel. This was a rank that I had earned on active duty. So remember, we ended this the waiting place. So I basically joined the Guard to wait out those precious 5 years so that I could earn a retirement that I would enjoy at 65. For people are just waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, or waiting around for a yes or a no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting for the fish to bite, or waiting for the wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night, or waiting perhaps for Uncle Jake, or the pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another chance. Everybody is waiting. So I started with the Air National Guard in early 2004. I was the first person hired into the intelligence flight. My job was to build the flight and build relations with our active duty counterparts in order to demonstrate the value of the new association between the Guard and the active duty. Probably the most important thing I had to do was to learn the Guard way of doing things so I could explain its value to the active duty, but more importantly, so I could adjust my active duty mindset and embed productively with my new cohort, an entity about which I knew very little. I had done what was asked of me, and the team I had pulled together was very capable and very respected. But along the way, I rubbed someone from my unit the wrong way. She was someone who was extremely well known, very well established, and had a long history in the unit. I was the new gal, and she was making it very hard for me to thrive. And I was beginning to worry that she was starting to turn people within the unit against me. No, that's not the place for you, the waiting place. Somehow you'll escape all that waiting and staying. You'll find bright places where the boom bands are playing. With a banner flip-flapping once more you'll ride high, ready for anything under the sky, ready because you're that kind of guy. So after 11 years living in Omaha, in July of 2007, Steve, Mark, who was 9, and Dana, who was 6, and I once again loaded up the U-Haul, this time bound for Montgomery, Alabama, and Maxwell Air Force Base. I was one of a few Air National Guardsmen to receive a seat at the Air Force's Air War College, a year-long program designed to prepare military's future leaders to lead at the strategic level. During the course of that year, I earned my second master's in strategic studies. As a student in the War College's China Studies breakout, I also had the opportunity to study Chinese, ni hao, and in April of 2008, I spent 10 days traveling China, meeting with various military entities within that country. Oh, the places you'll go. There is fun to be done. There are points to be scored. There are games to be won. And the magical thing is, what you can do with the ball will make you the winningest winner of all. Fame. You'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV. After War College, Steve and I packed up household goods once again and the kids, and we headed for Washington, D.C. for my next assignment. The National Guard Bureau's Air National Guard Directorate, Intelligence Directorate, hired me in a temporary capacity to help with the work that they were doing following the round of 2005 base realignment and closures. The Air National Guard units across the country, many of them had lost very traditional missions like fighter aircraft and were being given intelligence missions instead. In fall of 2008, I applied for a permanent position with the National Guard Bureau's Joint Intelligence Directorate, first as a division chief and then as the deputy director. The following summer, I promoted to colonel, and during the almost 3 years in these positions, we built a program to provide the chief of the National Guard Bureau, a new member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and a weekly intelligence briefing at the highest level of classification so that we could help him maintain a situational awareness that was on par with his service chief counterparts. We also worked to develop tools and processes that allowed the 54 states, territories, and the District of Columbia's National Guards use their intelligence professionals legally and rightly to provide domain awareness during man-made and natural disasters. If you think back to Kent State and that horrible situation that occurred there, unfortunately, intelligence professionals were misused, and they were collecting intelligence on U.S. personnel, strictly verboten. And the National Guard had taken that misstep to heart and was afraid, if I can say it that way, to use their intelligence professionals legally and properly. All of their skills and abilities and even some of their tools could be used at an unclassified level to create and provide their adjutants general situation awareness during those crises. So that was a huge project, a lot of resistance, a lot of hesitation, but we moved the ball and we made it so that those people could provide good situational awareness to their senior leaders. Following that assignment, I served at the Air Force Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance Agency as their senior guard advisor at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. With the growth of intelligence missions in the Air National Guard, there was a bit of a clash of cultures occurring both at the headquarters level and out in the field. The National Guard needed someone to bridge the divide between the active duty and the Guard. Each side had complaints about the other, but neither could do what national defense required without the other. I was sent as a diplomat of sorts to break down communication barriers, debunk myths, and change unhelpful mentalities that both sides harbored. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play a lonely game too, games you can't win because you're playing against you. Our time in Texas was very, very short, as I was selected to serve again back in D.C. as the director of the Air National Guard's Intelligence Directorate, or the A2. My work in the A2 was focused on continuing to build relationships across the active duty and the Guard divide in support of the states as they brought on their new intelligence missions, and demonstrate to my active duty counterparts that Guardsmen were as well trained and as well prepared to do everything asked of them in a timely, cost-effective, and relevant manner if properly funded and they had the right equipment. All alone, whether you like it or not, alone will be something you'll be quite a lot. And when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some, down the road, hither and yon, that can scare you so much you won't want to go on. The real reason I believe that officers commission is so that they can serve either their soldiers or sailors or airmen as commander. Not every officer gets this chance. I, however, was very fortunate to serve as the commander of the Air National Guard's Training and Education Center, located in McGee-Tyson Air National Guard Base, south of Knoxville, Tennessee. The center was home to one of the Air Force's 8 non-commissioned officer academies, and was home to the Air National Guard's only Airman Leadership School, as well as many Air National Guard's ancillary training courses. At any one time, we'd have between 200 and 300 active Guard and Reserve Airmen on the base going through a various course of study. During my time in command, my Adjutant General, so that the acronym is the Adjutant General, or TAG, and every state, territory, and the district has a TAG who is the senior most ranking military guardsman, either Army or Air, in that state. My state, if you remember, was Nebraska. So my TAG reached out to me. His name is Daryl Bohack, and he encouraged me, he endorsed me to pursue federal recognition as a brigadier general. This is a vetting process that the reserve component uses to identify officers ready to serve at the next level. Those who receive federal recognition don't promote immediately. It's not until you find a brigadier general position that you promote. After I received federal recognition, the National Guard Bureau brought me and my family back to D.C. for the 3rd time. This time, the National Guard Bureau, this time I was the National Guard Bureau's Chief of Staff for the Joint Staff. It was a colonel position, and I later learned from the Chief of the National Guard Bureau that he brought me back into D.C. because there were more potential opportunities for me to land into a brigadier general slot in D.C. than likely anywhere else. But I served as a Chief of Staff for about a year, and I would describe my purpose during that year was to be the WD-40 for the command. Basically, I would find those friction spots between the various agencies, and I'd squirt myself in there and see how we could find a solution so that we could optimize our performance. But on you will go, though the weather be foul. On you will go, though your enemies prowl. On you will go, though the hack and cracks howl. Onward up many a frightening creek, though your arms may get sore and your sneakers may leak. On and on you will hike, and I know you will hike far and face up to your problems, whatever they are. So on I went. In April 2017, I promoted to Brigadier General and served as the Deputy Director of Manpower and Personnel Directorate at the National Guard Bureau in the Joint Staff. The Director, Major General Kevin McNeely, and I worked tirelessly to support the personnel at the Bureau and all of the civilian and technician personnel across the country. During our time together, the largest challenge we faced was converting the a certain number of technician personnel from under the Adjutant General's purview to a federal civilian employee. And as you can imagine, that got a lot of Adjutants General very excited. We had to balance the concerns of state leadership, and this, by the way, was a congressionally mandated conversion, so it had a lot of attention of congressmen who were basically tired of this particular class of technician, because we would continually, the Bureau would continually go back to Congress to incrementally increase the number because it was capped. And they were just tired of it. And so they made a decision to convert all of those particular technicians to federal civilians. But anyway, so we had to work, this is why I have a script, I'm sorry. We had to work to balance the concern of state leadership, human resource offices from across the country, the congressional representatives who had a very intense interest in this conversion, and our joint staff counterparts, but most importantly, the incumbents of the converting positions. This conversion was packed with legal and emotional implications, and there was no room for error and an intense sense of urgency. And miraculously, we executed the conversion, but mostly because of some very hard-earned cooperation from across the Bureau and the field. You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life's a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot and your left. My second Brigadier General assignment was as the United States European Command's Deputy Director for Partnerships, Security Cooperation, and Missile Defense in the Plans, Policy, Strategy, and Capabilities Directorate. Now you can imagine that business card was quite crowded. Located in Stuttgart, Germany. There was no U-Haul involved in this move, and Mark had already begun his freshman year at Memphis, and so Steve, Dana, and I, in February of 2019, packed up our suitcases and boarded a plane for our next adventure. In my time at European Command, I traveled to 20 countries, visiting with military counterparts and meeting with senior leaders in the various ministries of defense. Those countries included Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, proper, Greenland, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, Estonia, Poland, Moldova, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, France, Portugal, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and Ukraine. I worked on Ukrainian security assistance prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I worked on a $435 million Baltic integrated air and missile defense project, and on Poland's defense cooperation agreement. As it happened, with my eligibility for promotion to Brigadier General in 2019, my tag once again endorsed me for federal recognition, this time to Major General. I received the recognition. Now all I needed was a 2-star position. Time passed, but nothing materialized, so when my tag called me and asked me to consider returning to Nebraska and serve as the Assistant Adjutant General for Air, a 1-star position, I accepted. I suspected he was maybe bringing me a little closer to home to prepare me to potentially be a contender as his replacement. On the eve of my return to Nebraska, the Deputy Commander of European Command called me and asked me if I'd be interested in continuing my service in Europe as the Director for Exercises and Assessments, a 2-star position. This was very unexpected. I told him before I could accept, I needed to make 2 phone calls. My first phone call was to Steve, and actually that phone call was really short because he said, "Why are you on the phone with me?" Of course. "Now call your tag," and that was my second phone call to my Adjutant General. My Adjutant General was genuinely enthusiastic and supportive of this development. And he said to me, "No one would fault you for taking this incredible opportunity." Now, had he ended there, I would have returned to Nebraska. But he went on to say, "Least of all me," and that was the endorsement I needed. So we turned off our move back to the States and looked forward to what lay ahead the next 2 years. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98.75% guaranteed. Kid, you'll move mountains. In my last 2 years in uniform, I had the honor of advancing European Command's Exercise and Assessments program and thicken relationships with our NATO counterparts. Not only those counterparts in the then 30 and now 32 various NATO nations, but also with the various nations' counterparts at the Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers Europe, or SHAPE headquarters in Belgium. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, every member of NATO understood deeply and urgently if Russia wasn't stopped in Ukraine, it wouldn't stop with Ukraine. A new sense of urgency was placed on defense training and preparation, as well as interoperability and integration, and there was no better method than with military exercises to test and develop those abilities. As my time in the European Command drew to a close in 2023, my TAG announced his retirement. I threw my name in the hat for Governor Pillen's consideration, but he chose someone else. I would have liked to have continued to serve, but no other opportunities opened up, and it was very easy for Steve and I to decide to retire in Iowa Falls and to help Dana with her bakery. So, be your name Bucksbaum or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai Alley Van Allen O'Shea, you're off to great places. Today's your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. So I'm unsure if I've moved my mountain or if I've yet to move it. But what I do know is God has a plan for me, as stated in Jeremiah 29:11. While I wasn't ready to leave military service 2 years ago, there was nothing else for me. I still get sad, and I miss my time in uniform, but then I remember very sage advice from Dr. Seuss. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. Thank you. That was a lot, and really fast, and it kind of took a long time, I'm sorry. But I am open to any questions you might have.
Have you ever heard of or met, or he was a generation before you, but did you ever know of a man named Gary Blair?
Gary Blair.
He was born and raised in Iowa Falls. He was a fighter pilot. He ended up as a Major General in the Air Force National Guard in Montana.
Oh, okay. Blair. Now that you put it in a guard.
He's a native son.
Yeah, because I worked with a lot of adjutants general when I was helping do that conversion. And actually I worked with a lot of adjutants general when I was doing the teaching and training to use their intelligence professional skills so that they could increase their situational awareness. The name's not ringing a bell, but it's possible.
Yeah, maybe he's someone you could check up on, because you're actually the second Major General in the Air Force National Guard that we've had as a citizen.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. That says a lot about this town. That's cool. Thank you, I appreciate the question. Anyone else, or have you had enough? Are you eyeballing those cookies or maybe the coffee? I'm not sure. I won't hold you hostage. I'll hang around if you do have questions, be happy to answer them. I really appreciate you coming out tonight. I hope you enjoyed the story. It was a wild ride. Well, thank you.
Thank you.